bring all of you guys over here. Cool. Share screen, desktop 2. And then I can see all of you. Great. And we can full screen that. Okay. So we're going to start this morning talking about the Mitre Attack framework, which besides sounding really cool is actually also really cool. So does anyone know about the Mitre organization? We'll start with them first. Does anyone have any familiarity, or can just give me a one-sentence description? Who is Mitre and what do they do? Hey, William, who's Mitre and what do they do? You can Google it. And you're muted if you were not aware.
Man.
Oh, got him today.
It's a, wait, what? I am not familiar with Mitre at all.
Okay, that's cool. We're going to get familiar with them because they're pretty awesome. So it's a not-for-profit group. Originally, I feel like it was funded out of MIT and government. And now it is funded through a bunch of different groups. If you actually Google, you might see it known as like a backronym for MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Research and Engineering. But that's a backronym. MITRE doesn't actually stand for anything. It just sounds cool and it's provocative. You can look that up. Attack also, that sounds cool. And that's the framework we're going to be talking about today. This one actually does stand for something. It's not a backronym. But we'll go ahead and take a look at what it's used for and how we're going to use it as blue teamers and security professionals. So let's move forward. So first, what is the Mitre Attack framework? And then actually using it. And we're gonna use it to kind of role play a bit from some of the threat modeling that we've done earlier on in Blue Team. So first, let's take a look at some hard questions that this framework is going to help us answer. And the first question that we're always going to have as blue teamers are, how effective are my defenses? Right? We put up all these defenses, we put up firewalls, right? We put up post-intrusion detection systems and, encrypt our devices and data. But then, you have to ask yourself, how effective are all of these things that I've actually done? And how are you going to measure this, right? That's a difficult question to actually answer. Other questions are like, you're modeling for a particular threat group. Do I have a chance at detecting this group? Right. So for example, say I work in the financial sector and I'm worried about APT 38, which is this North Korean group that is known for hacking financial institutions and putting ransomware on them. Do I have a chance with my current defenses and security posture? Will I even detect it if they get in? Right. These are questions that are hard to answer. We're collecting tons of logs. You spent the last 2 days with Splunk as a tool to kind of aggregate these logs and sort through them. But I think even a more basic question is like, am I even collecting the right logs? Like, am I looking at anything that's important here? Right. So this is another hard question that we have to ask ourselves every time we're going through all of this. Other questions we'll have is like, do we have overlapping coverage? Are these tools that we're using, do they cover ourselves in multiple layers, right? Do we have defense in depth? Are we achieving that? And also, right, as you are developing, you're going to have admin and, higher level people asking you to evaluate particular products. And your job might be, well, will this particular security product improve my organization's security posture, right? How do I evaluate if this is actually a tool I'm going to need, or if this is just some more, cybersecurity, a checkbox on cybersecurity that doesn't maybe actually improve my posture. And so the Mitre Attack framework is going to help us to answer these questions. Okay, so what is it? Firstly, it's just a knowledge base. I come from a background in physical science, and I think the best analogy to it is it's kind of like a periodic table. It has all of the different ways you can go about doing something. And so it's a knowledge base of all the adversarial techniques and all of the tactics that the bad guys are doing. And it's all based on things that have been seen in the wild. Additionally, it's got industry standard lexicon. So what does that mean? This is the language that is being standardized among security professionals so we can talk about it with different groups, right? It's important to realize that once one group gets hacked or one organization gets hacked, they're going to share this information with other organizations so that it's more helpful for you to be able to detect it, right? This MITRE framework, this attack framework, gives us a certain vocabulary with which to talk about our adversaries' techniques. It's community driven, just like I said before, right? This is not just the MITRE organization that is building this. There are, I want to say, about at least 50 different communities that are active in developing this framework. And so we'll take a look at the attack.mitre.org page and look at some specific techniques. Cool. So I will talk more about this when we're doing some more log hunting. But here is a cool pyramid that I think it's important we realize when we're looking at for indicators of compromise. So before I kind of dissect this pyramid here, what is an indicator of compromise? I know it was in the reading from last night because I read it this morning. Describe an indicator of compromise to me. Shlomo, could you describe an indicator of compromise? And if you can't, could you give me an example of one?
So it would be something that you would that would tip off the company that something that there has been a breach, like small pieces, like in logs or files, to tip off a breach.
Absolutely, absolutely, right? So if it's in the real world, it's, you know, glass being broken on the inside and stuff being stolen, the safe being open, right? These are indicators that someone's been in here and done something naughty. And so here you have a pyramid of indicators of compromise, and from the bottom up, it's the ones that are easy for us to detect, but also easy for our adversaries to change, right? So for example, we have hash values of particular files in malware, right? We know how easy it is to change the hash value, right? Just like add a small line of code that doesn't even do anything and you have a completely new hash, right? It's useless. It's trivial to change hash values. Same thing with IP addresses, right? You know that there's a particular IP address or domain that's hosting malicious software or something like that. Sure, you ban it, but think about how easy it is to change that and host it somewhere else. Higher up, we have network host artifacts and tools. This is where it gets a bit harder for our adversaries to change these things. What's a network artifact? What's a host artifact? What's an artifact? It's a little bit different than, yeah, what's an artifact here in this context? Peter, what do you think is an artifact in this context?
I'm thinking probably out-of-date technology.
Out-of-date technology?
Or like end of life, like maybe like operating systems, something like that, that you can't really patch because they're not servicing it anymore.
Okay, I see. You're thinking artifact like old.
Yeah.
Okay, not that way.
Yeah.
No, nope, not that. So someone else pick it up. What is an artifact? I like where you're thinking, but not exactly.
They're just like remnants of the attack, right? So things like logs and, you know, if you made a user account or something.
Ooh, you've activated my trap card. Not a log. Not a log, right? So logs won't be artifacts, but you're on the right track. So we've left artifacts, right? When back when we're in PWK and you know, you bring over your tools or create new files or add a new user, right? Those are the artifacts that you're leaving behind on the network. Those are indicators of compromise, right? Those are things that we're going to be looking for. So absolutely. So artifacts are going to be anything left behind that are not the logs, right? So any of the tools you bring over, right? When you get over your compiled exploit and run it, or when you add a new user account so that you can come back in, you have your persistent. These are all the network or host artifacts. Additionally, we have the tools, hacking exploit tools that hackers use. These are hard for the adversaries to change, right? They'd have to build a whole new tools. And then finally, at the very top, the very final top, you have the TTPs. And these are called the tactics, the techniques, and the procedures that their adversaries use. And this is the stuff that it's hard for them to change, right? These are their biases. This is their go-to methods of how groups are going to behave, right? These are the behavioral things that will not change. And this is kind of where we're going to be looking at and living when we're talking in the Mitre Attack framework, the TTPs. Okay, moving on. If you look up the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain, it looks like this. So this is often brought up at the same time with the Mitre Attack framework. So if you just follow down, this shouldn't look super surprising. We should see these steps before. At the beginning of an intrusion, you have the reconnaissance phase. You have weaponization, right? Choosing which tools you're going to use to actually get in. You have the delivery of the exploit, and followed by actually exploiting it. Finally, installing anything to gain persistence and to actually control the machine you're attacking, and then finally any actions you're going to take. So the attack framework, we're going to be living everywhere between delivery and actions on objective. We're not so much talking about the reconnaissance or the weaponization here when we're talking attack framework. We're living between delivery and actions on the objective. Okay. So let's actually take a look at this framework right now. This is slightly out of date. You'll see at the top, I believe there's 12, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11. There's 12 now columns at the top. And up top are the tactics, right? Everything up there is the essentially what that the adversaries are doing. So at the top, you have things that we should all be familiar with, right? Gaining initial access, right? Execution. All the way at the right, you have things that bad guys might do, like exfiltration, right? Getting the data out of there. And then once you click on each one of those boxes in there, in each matrix, you have the techniques, specific techniques. So if we're looking at initial access, right? One way, if you look all the way at the bottom under initial access, might be spear phishing, right? That is one way that an attacker may initially gain initial access. When we go through and look at it, you can actually click on their spear phishing, and they'll show you different categories of spear phishing, such as an email attachment or getting you to click a link, as well as specific instances that this has happened. So you can actually look at real case studies of where these attacks have gone through. So let's take a look. This is a specific procedure that was clicked, right? So DLL search order hijacking. These are fantastic because even if you don't exactly understand what DLL search order hijacking is, right? This is almost like the Wikipedia for you, the first place that you can go to learn about it. It's pretty clear text, at least at this point for our careers. Like this would be a good place to go to learn about all of these things, right? So we could take a look at DLL search order hijacking. We could read at what it is, and then we can continue on. What else is fantastic about it is it gives us examples, right? So here are specific cases where they can run that DLL search order hijacking here. This will make more sense as we actually go through the Mitre framework when we use their site. It gives you mitigations. So remember when you were writing your PWK reports and there were sections for mitigations and you were not sure what to write? Well, here you have answers for that, right? So if there's DLL hijacking, these are the things that you're going to want to be looking at for your mitigations of it, right? Are you auditing? Are you doing execution prevention? Are you doing restrict library loading? And do these, just because these are some of the mitigations, you have to ask yourself, does it make sense in my context for my organization? Right? Not all of these mitigations are going to be effective for you. It also has a section for detection, right? As you've been using Splunk and Snort right? You have to set up alerts, right? So here under the detection section, it gives you a starting point for what you should be looking for to even detect this, this attack. So it's absolutely fantastic. So let's do a quick summary of it. It's the language for attacks. I want you to use this to expand your vocabulary so that you'll be able to speak more clearly to other blue teamers in the field and red teamers. And what is it useful for, right? It's useful for setting up your detection, right? Each of those attacks has a section for how do you actually detect it. It's useful for threat intelligence. We'll look at that specifically in a moment, but it has lists of groups. So say you're working for a political party in another country or something like that, and you're worried about Russian interference, a particular threat, APT-28 or something, right? That's the Russian group that is known for these types of attacks. And then you want to see like, well, hey, what are their behaviors? What are the types of things that they look to do? And what are my defenses to mitigate it? You can continue doing this with threat assessments and adversary emulation, right? Like people actually will do role playing where they'll role play as one of these advanced persistent threats and follow the attack framework, like looking for these specific ways to get through. So let's actually take a look at that now. So this is where I want to show you. This is the Mitre Attack website. Let's make this a little larger. Okay. Where we're going to be playing most of the time today is this matrices section. So if you just click matrices, you'll get there. And here are the matrices, right? It's essentially a big table. And you'll see this is the newest one that was just added towards the middle of 2019, Impact, which is things like, data destruction, defacement, right? Things like that hacking groups like Anonymous might have done where they just, deface the web page or things like that. So now these will actually be listed. Cool. So there's cool stuff here. So let's say you were interested in modeling your threat for initial access, right? So phishing might be something you're concerned with. So you can go ahead and click phishing. It'll give you sub techniques. So spear phishing via an attachment on an email, spear phishing via a link, or spear phishing via a particular service. It gives you an explanation for what spear phishing is. And then you have here, these are the things that should be popping into your mind to mitigate spear phishing attack. Right? You'll see, I think, once you see these mitigations too, you're going to know for your organization, what is your security budget and what's going to make sense for your organization, right? I'm always someone that says user training is one of the highest value things, and you'll see user training as a mitigation for a few of these different types of attacks. So, it's important to look at here and your budget. You have a section under detection. How can you detect when this happens, right? These are the things that you're going to be looking for. How do you train your employees for what they need to be looking for this particular type of attack? So really cool stuff here. If you go to specifics, you get the specifics. So for example, spear phishing via a link, right? It gives you exact examples of where this has been done and who did it, right? You could see which APT, which group, right? So say I was particularly concerned about APT-33 doing it, right? Here's example. APT sent spear phishing emails linked to .hta files. You can either click for the exact reference to this, right? This one's a FireEye reference. Or say you're interested in particular APT-33, you could follow, and this will tell you all about APT-33 if you're worried about suspected Iranian threat groups because of your organization. I kind of also put this similarly to, is anyone familiar with the website TV Tropes? Yeah, TV Tropes. All right, so TV Tropes, I won't explain TV tropes, but it's one of these websites where you can kind of keep clicking the links and follow a rabbit hole of information. I find that you can do pretty similarly here, right? Like, I don't know, I'm always interested in like, what are these nation states doing under the hood, behind the scenes sort of things. And they always got such cool names like Leviathan and Lazarus Group. So you can always go here as your first stop shopping for, I'm interested in this. Or my organization is particularly worried about this group. Well, what is it that they do? What are their techniques that they are commonly using, right? Well, these are the things they do. Take a look at my threat model. Am I addressing these threats, right? Am I addressing them? Cool. Any questions? I'm kind of just like harping on about how awesome this this framework is. All right. Cool. So let's get into actually using this. There's two things that I'm going to want to show you to play around with. First is going to actually be the Mitre matrices. So just kind of going through here and looking through each one of these and just kind of getting your feel for it. Additionally, I'm going to link you this, which is a more interactive one. That you can sort of copy things down. So let's say you're worried about, let me phrase it like this. This is what you're gonna work on for the next bit of time. What I did here was grab one of your threat models from earlier last week. If you have that, we're going to reference it again. And all I did was copy out the adversarial threats. And what I want to do is just update this and use a bit more sophisticated vocabulary and get you guys to interact with this Mitre framework a bit. So what I want you to do is take a look, and we'll go through one of these together, so let's take a look at the threat we have here. Disgruntled employee abusing privileges to spy on specific clients or selling client information. What I want to do is map that over to this attack matrix, right? So the way I would do that is, let's see, abusing privileges to spy on specific clients or sell client information. That to me sounds like something that's exfiltration, right? We're taking data that should be confidential somewhere and taking it off, right? So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go over here. I'm going to choose which of these tactics my adversary is doing. Right, well, that's exfiltration. And I'm going to go through these techniques and figure out which specific ones do I want to make sure I'm defending against for this specific situation, right? So I would choose something like maybe exfiltration over physical medium. Maybe that's something I'm worried about. We work in a data center. Maybe this guy's bringing in his USBs, plugging them in, taking data out, and selling it somewhere on the black market. I don't know. If that's something I'm worried about, then I'm going to go ahead and click on it. I'm going to read through it and I'm going to make sure I've implement some of these mitigations, right? So let's see. Let's update this with, what are we doing? Exfiltration over physical medium. So that's what I'm going to add here. Exfiltration over physical medium. And then the mitigations I'm going to place for it. Well, I can choose. Limit the use of USB devices. Is that going to be something that will be effective for me? It depends on my organization. And again, we're role playing here, so you can make it up, right? I'm just following whatever the student wrote. So disgruntled employee abusing privileges. This is what I could imagine then, right? Let's just block all the USB ports. I don't have to worry about this anymore. So let's do that. I would just add limit USB devices, block removable media within the network. And how would I detect this? This is where it gets a little trickier. Here we go. That's all I have to do for detection. Some of them are a little bit more complicated, and you might not be able to do everything. But this is where I would like you guys to go. Kind of rephrase what your threat was, what you were worried about, map it to the Mitre attack techniques and tactics. Pick which mitigation you're going to use. It could be more than one. It depends on your organization and your context. And then choose how you're going to be able to detect for it, right? This means I'm going to need logs for when things get plugged in to USB, doesn't it, right? So the next question I would ask, am I collecting these logs, right? So this is how the framework essentially gets used on the blue team, okay? So I'm going to split you guys up into groups of 2. You're going to reference either students, right? So use whichever one's threat model, and then just map some Mitre attack tactics and techniques, a mitigation, and how you would go about detecting that. I don't like giving specific numbers because you could go as deep as you'd like, but I'd say at least 3. So for at least 3 adversarial threats, go through and map this out. I'm going to allocate 45 minutes for this. So that's like at least 15 minutes each. And then we'll share after that. So any questions on what we're going to be working on for the next 45 minutes? Do you guys find this cool? I don't know. When I was learning about this framework, I thought it was the coolest thing ever, because it's real. It's like, it's real. It's based on real things. It's not just proof of concepts that are out there. This is all stuff that people have seen in the wild with real groups, and their real names or whatever aliases people have found for them. All right. So I'm going to set up the breakout rooms now. Let's stop share. And we'll get started.